What's going on, people, and welcome back to another video. Now this one is one I've been meaning to do for months and months and months. Just haven't got around to it, been putting it off at times, just not feel like doing it. But today is the day I'm going to do it, and that is my top 10 favourite all-time football boots. Obviously I'm a 90s kid, so a lot of mine on this are probably a bit old school for some of you, but hopefully I can drop some knowledge on you if you're younger than me and don't know about some of these boots. But let's get into it. In at number 10, I'm going with the David Beckham Predators. I think they're described as champagne colour from 2002. I remember getting these. They were pretty much the only boot at the time that I bought that wasn't Nike. And I remember getting these and going up the park straight away and testing them out and just loving them. And as I said, it was a bit of a different boot to what became my favourite boots throughout my life, which were Nike. These are obviously Adidas, and I never had any of the original Predators or like the earlier ones than this. I believe my second pair of Adidas boots I've ever had, but this was my first pair of Adidas boots I ever had. And as I said, loved them, loved that. Beckham was one of my idols growing up as well, and I remember getting these and just couldn't believe it and going up the park and trying to recreate free kicks and that. So Predators 2002 Champagne. In at number 10. In at number 9, I've gone with the T90 number 2s, which were the ones before the popular ones that the likes of Rooney and certain players wore back in the day, like the gold and the white and the red and the white. These were the version before that. I always remember these from players like, I think Figo wore them. I know Roberto Carlos was definitely wearing them. He was kind of the one that caught my eye with them. And they had red and white ones, like I said, and they've got the Nike, and then they got the Air Zoom Total 90 on the tongues, which I remember. The Zoom writ on the heel, as you can see. The little Nike tick on the front of the boot as well as the side. And then you got them two like square stripes sort of patterned down the side of it, which were iconic at the time and really stood out to me. A lot of people had the white and red ones, but I always preferred the black and white ones because I remember Roberto Carlos rocking them, and he was one of my favourite players. So for me, it's a very nostalgic one. I never actually owned a pair of these, but I always wanted some. I just think they look class. So Air Zoom Total 90 black and white T90 number 2s. In at number 9. In at number 8, I've gone with the Nike Vapor 4. I actually had two sets of these. I had the white and blue ones and the white and green ones. Probably ended up wearing the white and blue ones more, but now looking back at it, I prefer the green ones. I just ended up playing more in the white ones. I think they lasted me a little bit longer. But obviously these were one of the first for their time, I think, where the laces were covered up. It had that sort of pocket at the front of the lace where it covered them. Give you like a cleaner contact on when you try and term the phrase lace shots, but obviously they were covered. I did get a lot of wear out of these boots. They lasted longer than some boots that I paid even more money for. And as I said, I had the green pair and I had the white pair. So yeah, I only recently found them and sort of got rid of them because they're just like beat up and holes and whatever, but they last me a long time. Fond memories of these ones. Got a lot of use out of them, and they were kind of technologically sort of advanced at the time. One of the first few boots that had come out at that point to cover laces, maybe even the first. But yeah, Nike Vapor 4s. In at number 8. In at number 7, I've gone with the Nike Vapor Victory boots. I like these in several different colourways, but the ones I've got in the picture, as you can see, my favourites were that kind of turquoisey teal kind of colour, with the tangy, zesty sort of orange and that bright yellow on the back, and then obviously the orange to match up on the studs underneath. I just remember players like Ozil wearing these, Ribery, Dempsey and players like that. Just remember these. They're not that old either, and loved several different colourways of these, but I just have a soft spot for Vapors. They're the most boots I've owned over the years. Yes, they've beat my feet up for it, blisters and such, but I just loved them, and I played most of my time when I played in Vapors. Didn't have these ones, but always liked them. Nike Vapor Victories. In at number 7. In at number 6, I've gone with the T90 Air Zoom Freeze. Obviously, we spoke about the number 2s. These, when they came out, were really, really iconic, and still are to this day. But I remember how popular these were when they came out. Took me years to get a pair, but I finally got the red and white ones. But again, I preferred the gold and white ones, but I was still happy to finally get my hands on a pair when I did. But the players that I remember, again, Roberto Carlos wore these. Rooney was the one that sticks out in my head. I think he wore these in his debut against Fenerbahce for Manchester United. I remember him wearing these gold and white ones. So, yeah, fond memories for me with these ones. As I said, the adverts and stuff at the time for these were super iconic, and still looking back on it today are very noticeable and instantly recognisable, with that big 90 on the side there with the circle around it, and just the design of the boot, how it looked. Most people at school, I remember, had these in like AstroTurf as well. So yeah, different versions of it, AstroTurf boots, but I remember these being hugely popular. One of the most popular on the list, if I'm honest. It would have been a lot of people's number ones, but not for me, but still fond memories. It is one of my favourites. Very good. As I said, a lot of nostalgia with these. Total 90 Air Zoom Freeze in at number 6. In at number 5 is my first boot I can remember actually receiving from my parents. I played in the first football team, a school football team that I got into in primary school, and these were the earliest memories of a football boot that I remember, and that is the classic Puma Kings. I can't remember if I just had the kind of white and black version or the white and black with the gold. I believe it was the gold, which is why I've gone with the picture that I've got. But the Puma Kings would have been 7 or 8 at the time, I reckon. Maybe slightly older, but I just remember receiving these from my parents at the time as a present, and just first time wearing them in a match and training, and just loved it that time growing up as well. And they were sick boots. Like, I've never actually owned a pair of Pumas since, and I don't really know why. I fell in love with Nike Vapors, as I said, but very happy memories with this boot. First pair I ever remember having, and it's a shame that I never ended up going back to them, because I kind of wish I had of now, looking at this picture. But yeah, this is the starter boot for me that got me into it, and the first boot I remember. So Puma Kings in at number 5. In at number 4, getting into the meat and gravy of it now, gone with the Nike Vapor 2s in the gold, Cristiano Ronaldo wearing, original Ronaldo wearing, R9, and that is with a little bit of white, but the gold and then the black as well. Iconic boot, very minimal in terms of what they did with it, but enough on there that it's iconic to me. One of the early Vapors. I prefer these to the more modern ones, always have. Never had a pair of these ones, always wish I had some. Never actually got my hands on any, but I remember players wearing these, like I said, Cristiano, the original Ronaldo as well. Fond memories of these, always wanted a pair. They look sick, and it just goes to show what, at the time, that they were very, like, kind of ahead of their time as well in terms of technology and how light they were. Not the most protective on the foot, as with most Vapors, but you really did feel like you got a boost in your performance, even at Sunday League level and stuff, because of how light they were. It gave you more confidence. So yeah, the gold, black and white Mercurial Vapors 2 in at number 4. In at number 3 were another iconic boot for me that I remember taking ages to pick in the shop between these and, I think they were blue, black and white Vapors. And this is the Nike Mercurial Vapors 3, and I eventually went with the white, yellow and black. Like the old school studs on it as well, as you can see from the picture. I remember unboxing these, and as I said, it took me a while in the shop to decide between these and the blue ones, because the blue ones were super popular at the time, maybe even more than the white ones, but I fell in love with these ones, and I'm glad that I picked them in the end. I probably got a year or two's worth of use out of them. Not as didn't have as much longevity as some of the other boots in terms of just how long till the stitching and that came apart, but I remember just pleading with my mum to get me these at the time, and as I said, I loved them, and looking back on them, happy memories. And yeah, similar to the Puma Kings, these are one of the ones that stand out in my head and that I owned. A lot of these on the list I didn't ever actually get a pair of or own, but these were one of the few that I did get my hands on, and yeah, fond memories, love them, still love to look at them to this day. I remember Henry wearing these, that stands out most in my head, in that Arsenal season where they wore that like maroon kit. He wore these then, and he was one of my idols, still one of my all-time favourites. And yeah, Vapors again, I'm a sucker for them, but a pair that I owned and loved. Nike Mercurial Vapors number 3 in the white, black and yellow, in at number 3 as well. In at number 2, another Mercurial Vapor, and that is the Nike Mercurial Vapor R9s, the silver or metallic white and orange. Another pair that I was fortunate enough to own. I believe this was my first pair of this boot of this like level that I forked out the most money on, my own money. I think I paid about 180 quid for these at the time. I believe it was about that. So a lot of money at the time for me to fork out on something like that. Again, durability, they lasted me a while, but not as long as the green and white Vapors I mentioned earlier on, and the white and blue ones. But these were more higher end of it as well, like designed slightly for like higher levels. As I said, I got at least a year out of them before the stitching and that started to bust a bit, but I loved the colorway, loved how they looked. I liked other colorways of this as well. I was tempted to get with the yellow on as well, but I ended up going with the orange in the end, and I think I still have these somewhere, but they're really beat up, and as I said, the stitching come apart. But another one, not the most protective on your foot. I remember these causing blisters and stuff, but loved them. Again, give me more confidence when I played, give me that boost. And yeah, miss them. Mercurial Vapors R9, the silver, black and orange, in at number 2. And then number 1, one of my best mates at the time actually had a pair of these. We played for a dreadful team at the time, but he had a pair of these and I always wanted them, but he'd never sell them or nothing. And I never saw them anywhere at the time to buy them anywhere. And they are unfortunately never got around to actually owning a pair, because I'd have loved to have played in them, as they are my favourite boot of all time just to look at. And they must have been great to play in, that lightweight feeling. And that is the Mercurial Vapors number 2 in the silver and blue, that kind of metallic silver and blue from 2004. But as I said, my best mate at the time, in football at the time as well, that I played with, actually wore these quite a bit. And I believe at the time I had either my silver and orange ones I had, or still had the white and yellow and black Vapors. But I always was jealous and wanted a pair of these as well. But you can't have them all. You can't, like, especially at the time as well. It might have been around the time my parents were still buying them as well. So, yeah. Love these. I love how the design of the studs are with that plastic moulding, and then the studs sort of slot into them at the bottom. Obviously, the design of it, that classic Mercurial look with the sort of lines down it. The blue and the silver colourway is sick. And I've never actually tried a pair on, but just from looking at them, I can tell that they're not the most protective, but they will really give that lightweight feeling that at the time was revolutionary and really gave you that boost that you needed at times mentally. So, and just confidence wise, and you just enjoy your football more. So yeah, love these boots. They have always been my favourite. Mercurial Vapors number 2 in silver and blue, and that is my number 1. So that is it for my all-time favourite football boots. Let me hear some of yours in the comments, whether you played or just a fan of them. More interesting if you've played. Let me know in your comments what your favourite ever boot is. Maybe you're still playing now and the more current ones, but I'll be interested to hear. As I said, I've been meaning to do this one for months and months, so I'm glad to finally get it out for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Did bring back some fond memories for me, this one, as I owned some of them. So there's a lot of nostalgia in there as well. In a bit.